This is the moment we've been waiting for. Since the hours we gathered together on a night in November, painfully aware of the long fight ahead. Since the day we decided that we would not give in and grab the hand of our nearest neighbor and march to the streets. Since the moment millions joined the chorus to tell the world we would not stand for injustice against any one of us. We marched, we rallied, we fought, we steeled ourselves, and we rose up as corruption tore through the White House like a wildfire. We rose up as our country changed in ways that were unrecognizable, and we showed up for every single battle. While those at the top stoked the fires of division, each day Americans made the choice to come together. We are still in the streets, we are still fighting, knowing that what we fight for matters more than anything. And this is the moment we've been waiting for. This is our opportunity to reject the politics of hate, chaos, division, and change the course of history. This November, we have an opportunity to elect a leader who will join us as we build an America for all. The moment where we grab our family, our friends, and show up to change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Vote is Power, Power in Action series. My name is Chris Percy, and I'm the training director here at Move On. As people are joining from around the country, let's get a chance to know one another in the chat. So please share your first name, your pronouns, and where you're viewing this series from. I will start. As I said, my name is Chris Percy. My pronouns are he, him, and I am from the West Side of Chicago. So please go ahead and just write into the chat where you're from, and let's get to know one another tonight. I'm so glad that I am here with you all, and I'm so glad to dig into today's program. Whether it's supporting a candidate, fighting to pass progressive legislation, or working to change this world to be one where we can all thrive, Move On members are committed to an inclusive and progressive future. So welcome to you, whether you have been a part of Move On for the last 20 years or anything in between. Or if you are just here tonight and you're like, what is going on? What are these people talking about? Let me spend my Sunday with these folks. I am glad that you are here with us tonight. We have a great program planned for you today, including our ED, Rana Epting, Maurice Mitchell, and many more to really just showcase. I'm so excited for you to hear from some of those folks we have for you tonight. So we're here to talk today about how you, okay, if you're in your chat, just put the word you so I know that you're listening to me. We're here to talk about how you can help get out the vote and ensure a landslide victory November 3rd. Over 93 million people have already voted in this election, which is like, well, it's dope. I'm so happy that we are doing that. So, and many more people have voted in early Texas this year than have voted in all of 2016. We are the majority, and we just need to keep turning out our folks and making sure that they know that it's time to go vote. We just have a couple days left. If you are joining us for the first time, you might hear this from me for the first time. If you've been here for more than one of these, then you've heard me say this. It is a reminder that you can pull out your phone And you can text the word power, that is POWER, to 668-366 to help get 3 of your friends out to vote. And they don't even have to be your friends. Okay. Get some people in your phone that you ain't talked to in a while. Okay. Get some folks that you used to talk to and don't like no more. Okay. Time to rekindle some stuff. We got to pull out all the stops. Text power to 668-366 to help get at least 3 of your friends out to vote. And listen, like, we are just a couple of days away, but what have we been doing here at Move On for this election cycle? For those of you who haven't heard, we have the Mobilize to Win program that we've been doing this year. This year, we have committed to empowering each other to support at least 10 people in our network. Again, whether they family, friends, classmates, other family members in the community, old boyfriends, old girlfriends, old confidants, everything, to form what we call a vote team, where you come together and navigate through the 2020 election season. Uh, Vote mobilizers who create these teams basically are making sure that their team gets out to vote this November, which is today. Today is November 1st. Oh my God, it's so we are here. So folks have supported each other in making a vote plan and making sure that they vote by November 3rd, and to get those 3 friends to make sure that they do the same. If you're a vote mobilizer, please let us know in the chat. Go ahead and just type it away. Get your props, get your shout out, and let us know in the chat that you're a vote mobilizer. We have a couple days, and there's so much work that we can still do to make sure that we win this election. So if you're a vote mobilizer, go ahead and let us know in the chat. And again, if you are like, well, how can I get folks now? It's just a couple days. Reminder, you can text power to POWER to 668-366 to help get your 3 friends to vote, at least 3. Okay. And with that, I'd like to introduce our renowned, super awesome, super dope ED, Rhonda Epting, the ED of Move On.
Hello, everyone. We are almost there. We've waited 48 months for what will happen in less than 48 hours. So for 4 years, we've marched, we've protested, we've jammed Congress with an overwhelming number of phone calls. We've signed and delivered petitions, millions of signatures on these petitions. We've showed up for one another and the values we believe in. We stood up for the country we believe in and the even better version of it that we know is possible. And soon, the polls will open on Election Day, and we will finally get the chance to do what we've been working towards for the last 4 years, to vote them out. We will send Donald Trump packing. We will take the gavel from Mitch McConnell, and we will get to give Democrats an even bigger margin in the House of Representatives. But we can't take 1 minute for granted. We've got to run through the finish line. We have to leave it all on the field in the next 48 hours. There is still incredible work that we get to do to build the country we want. If you haven't voted yet, get off this live stream and go vote. Please make sure you have a plan to vote on Tuesday. Be prepared to stand in line. Take some water, take some food, take a folding chair, take your friends. Do not leave the line. Make sure you're able to exercise the power you have. Your vote, our vote, is our power, and we must use it to determine the kind of world we want to live in. Now, if you've already voted, thank you so much. But you ain't done yet either. We need you. We need you to text and phone your friends, your family members, and voters in swing states to ensure they vote. Do it now. Take your phone out right now and text power. Text the word power to 668-366 to get involved. We'll help you out. We need you. We need everyone to win right now. All of the chaos over the last 4 years, the hatred, the racism, the incompetence, the indifference, the self-dealing, The packing of our courts, the breaking of the Senate, Trump and the Republicans, they have been terrorizing our country for 4 years. I'm tired of it. I know you're tired of it. And the wonderful thing is that we have the opportunity to shift the winds now, to change the course of history we're on. We can change. We can make a change if we exercise our vote. We have the opportunity to turn the page and elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and to create a new path in our country. We can restore the soul of this country, a direction that focuses on the needs of the people, a direction that will take this deadly pandemic seriously, a direction that will listen to science, facts, and reason, a direction that will be truthful and honest with the American people. Winning all of this is within our reach. I'm very clear on that, and I'll tell you why. Because we have a secret sauce. It may sound cheesy, but that secret sauce is you. It's us together. Millions of Move On members across this country. We are strong. We are powerful when we move together. And when you look out your window this election cycle, it may not look like a normal election. It may not look like millions of us are moving together, campaigning to win. Usually in battleground states right about now, we'd see neighborhoods covered and people going door to door, talking to voters to make sure everyone came out to vote. But in a pandemic, things are a little different. And that's okay, because rest assured, things may look different. But the turnout operation to get out the vote this year could not be any more electric. We've got an electric army of volunteers, and they've been busy. And we're reaching voters in innovative, even more impactful ways than we've ever done before. More impactful than door knocking. And let me tell you a little bit of what that looks like. More than 780,000, yes, I said 780,000 Move On volunteers have pledged to get 3 or more of their friends who live in swing states to vote. And we know people are more likely to come out and vote when a trusted person in their lives encourages them to. Okay, the next thing, we've got over 10,000 Move On vote mobilizers. These are folks like you, maybe some of you on this live stream, that are committing to turn out 10 people in their networks in battleground states to vote. Do the math. That's millions of votes right there. Our text team broke a record by texting 2.9 million people in a single day last week. And then the next day, they broke the record again and texted 3.1 million people in a single day. We have over 3,056 Move On volunteers signed up with fellow progressives for the Biden-Harris phone banks and counting. I mean, I'm losing track of the numbers because every day it's ratcheting up and up, and you can be a part of that. This is the power of us. We are the majority. And when we vote, when we volunteer, we win. Our vote is power, and we need to exercise it. And just like 2 years ago, when Democrats won historic victories, we need to come out in historic numbers again to send a message and make a new history for our country. So stick with us tonight. You'll learn throughout this call how you can join us in clinching that win, because we can win and we will win. And you know who we're going to do it with? With one another. We're going to do it together. And I'm so honored to be in this fight with all of you. And I will hand it over to my friend and colleague, Chris.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sonia, and I'm a proud Boricua. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm calling from Garancawa land in Houston, Texas. I am so excited to welcome today Naomi Klein to our live stream. Naomi is an award-winning journalist, New York Times bestselling author, and senior correspondent for The Intercept. Thank you for joining us, Naomi.
Thank you, Sonia. I'm so glad to be with you. And everybody at Move On, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. A lot of things are at stake at this election, among them the climate crisis. And your work has largely focused on climate change and how inaction has aggravated this crisis. Now, the climate crisis has kind of been braided with other crises, right? COVID-19, the largest unemployment crisis since the Depression era, and racial capitalism. I'm watching as my family and friends face another hurricane in Louisiana, another fire in California, loss of job, evictions, all in the midst of corporations gaining millions of dollars in profit from the COVID-19 pandemic. So what do you think people need to understand about the importance of addressing climate change with robust progressive policy and also, importantly, in an intersectional way?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you just described why we need the robust part, because we are in the crisis, right? For a long time, climate change was seen as like something to care about, like for your grandkids, or like some off in the distant future, and it was very much sort of pitted against the kind of here and now banging down the door issues. But as you say, if you've lost your home to a storm, if you are dealing with absolutely toxic air quality because of these huge wildfires. My sister in Oklahoma hasn't had power in 6 days. She's being told she's not going to get her lights on until November 6th. That's pretty urgent, right? But we do live, as you say, in a time of overlapping and intersecting crises. And the way I sometimes think about it is that we are in this age of consequences, where all of these attempts to kind of kick the can down the road, it's up. All the consequences are coming at once. And every crisis has every other crisis within it. So with COVID, we saw that you couldn't separate it from racial injustice, gender injustice, the fact that workers in this country are treated terribly, the fact that people don't have health insurance. And the same is true of climate breakdown, right? We often hear this, disasters don't discriminate. They do discriminate. Whatever was bad before gets unbearable during the disaster. I came to writing about climate change by writing about what I call disaster capitalism or the shock doctrine. I was in New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and saw this so clearly, right? That of course it discriminated. If you had money and means, you got in your car, you drove out of the city, you checked into a hotel, you called your insurance agent. If you needed there to be a functioning state, you were abandoned on rooftops and in the Superdome. And then white vigilantes came in and started shooting Black people. And it was in very many ways a kind of a preview of what we're seeing on a national scale right now. So we don't win climate action that is guided by science and that is as robust as we need it to be by playing my crisis is bigger than your crisis, right? Like you would hear a few years ago with a straight face from people in the climate movement, well, look, we're not going to be able to do anything about poverty if we lose the planet. So let's just fix climate change and then we'll worry about racism, or then we'll worry about poverty. And in a moment like the one we are living in, that was never true. But in a moment like the one we are living in, where we have mass hunger and unemployment ravaging the country, we need to multitask, right? So we have to build the next economy in the rubble of the old because everything is failing. And that's what we have the opportunity to do with a robust, justice-guided, science-based climate plan. And frankly, don't tell anyone I said this, I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you call it a Green New Deal. What I care is that the core principles of a Green New Deal, which is that it's guided by science and justice, guides whatever the plan is. And so, we don't have a choice. I mean, the idea that it's somehow more strategic to just carve climate out is, I think, the opposite of strategic, because what you see is that if people believe that climate action is going to cost them jobs, is going to make their life more expensive, they will reject it. And they have rejected it in those iterations. And so I think it's really a very good development that Joe Biden always talks about jobs, as soon as the issue of climate change comes up. We do need to understand that this is a make or break decade for climate, that we need to change everything in the next 10 years. The good news is that people understand that the status quo isn't working for them anyway. So that there is, I think, more of an appetite for that scale of change in a moment of crisis. And
exactly,
the Green New Deal, it's the name takes its inspiration from the original New Deal. And it's a reminder that moments of crisis in American history have provided the catalyst for the scale of change that we need.
Exactly. What you mentioned about disaster capitalism is so relatable to me, because as a person who has most of my family either in Puerto Rico or Houston, in 2017, I saw these massive storms, Harvey and Maria, ravage where we were from. And I saw, yes, the horrifying impacts in Houston, but I saw the disproportionate response that both places received. And I think you're exactly right. There's not a lot of silver linings when you look at the moment after a disaster, but what has been really enlightening has been seeing the vigor that young people, low-income people, people of color have adopted in the face of these moments, and the creativity and innovation that is possible if they are supported through broad strokes policy. At least in Puerto Rico, what we've seen is the huge rise of innovative agriculture that tries to take into account the way that we're going to expect a lot more hurricanes to be passing through a Caribbean sea. So anyway, that's just an example of how industry, I think especially people who work in industry, even in a place like Baytown, Texas, where I'm from, people are starting to understand that it is even make or break for their jobs. And that requires a mindset change. So you've also said that along these lines, there's bold transformative action, or there's sinking ground, burning ground, and turning ground. No middle ground on climate policy. You've also coined the term shock doctrine, which you just mentioned, or the way in which dangerous and predatory ideas get implemented during extremely difficult economic and social moments, say like right now. So what do you want our audiences to understand about their role in advocating for more impactful climate policy and the importance of a Biden-Harris administration in that advocacy?
All right, so there's a lot there, but it's interesting that you're talking about Houston and Puerto Rico and that kind of lived experience. I think there are more and more voters who have that kind of lived experience. This is not an abstract issue for them. So we are here 2 days before the election. So that means that the first thing that we need to do is vote. We need to get rid of Trump, and not just vote yourself, but as you heard, get 3 friends to vote too, and remind them, and really just do everything you possibly can in the next few days. And that matters because, as we were just talking about, we cannot lose this next decade. Trump is worse than inaction. It's active planetary arson that he is engaged in, desecrating some of the last pieces of pristine wilderness, opening them up to oil and gas leasing, attacking every environmental protection on the books. And he has also implemented a kind of shock doctrine where the cover of his nonstop shocks and the pandemic is being used to accelerate all of this while handing out massive no strings attached bailouts to fossil fuel companies. So we are seeing an example of what I've called the shock doctrine right now. A second term would be a shock and awe approach, I'm absolutely convinced, because it would just be Trump unleashed with absolutely nothing to lose. No re-election to worry about. And in that context, even if we were to win every battle against his latest terrible, terrible plan, and we won't win every battle, we would still be on burning ground. So Biden-Harris winning does not fix everything by any means, and I think we all know that. It just gets us to the ground where we're able to start. The real work starts at the beginning of that administration. And that's why these next days matter so much, why we have to make sure that Trump is absolutely and irrefutably trounced. But in terms of our role and my role, your role, if we end up with a Biden administration, and we must, it's, I think, very much to keep up the sense of urgency. Don't believe anyone who tells you that you can't have influence, or who tells you, give them a chance. Don't, they're under so much pressure, precisely because the oil and gas company will be pressuring them to roll back their most ambitious promises. Grassroots movements, social movements need to be pushing them from the left. And we already know that we can have an impact because we have already had an impact. Biden has moved a lot since the primary, thanks in part to the joint committee formed with the Sanders campaign, thanks to the fact that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Varshini Prakash from Sunrise were on the climate committee. And the result is that Biden has what activists in the movement are calling the boldest climate plan of any presidential campaign in American history, and that is just true. He is pledging to get the U.S. to 100% clean energy by 2035, which is much faster than he was talking about at the beginning. So we're no longer talking about, targets that are so far in the distance, like 2050, that it basically means that the next administration won't really have to be the one to determine it. He's talking about 20% of the federal budget on climate investments, which is just exponentially larger than what the Obama administration did with the stimulus after the financial collapse of 2008. 40% of investments in frontline communities. So that's the racial justice element. That is the piece of it that accounts for the fact that frontline communities, overwhelmingly communities of color, have borne the brunt of the toxic brunt of fossil fuel extraction and combustion in their communities. So, I think it's exciting, and we're going to have to hold them to it. We're going to have to push them. But I don't think people should feel like begrudging about casting a ballot. I think people should feel like there is still a case for climate optimism, as my friend Danielle Aldana Cohen recently wrote.
Exactly. Yeah. Climate optimism is so real. And I think, again, I love my thin silver linings, but I think with climate optimism, there is something to see with what it will look like to create a just recovery from COVID-19 that can be braided with this response. So thank you, Naomi. Last question, briefly, what is personally giving you hope and strength right now? And if you're struggling with that, which I think some of us are, how are you creating your own hope?
Oh my goodness. Last night was a full moon. It was really witchy. I got some hope from that. Full moon on Halloween. It was a blue moon. So I sort of tried to call in the ancestors and all the people who have worked so hard to have the kind of progressive movements that we have right now on the scale that we have right now, which is greater than at any point in my lifetime, right? I'm terrified like everyone else, but I have to remind myself that the size of the progressive movement is like nothing I've ever seen before. The strategy of it, the fact that we have people on the outside and the inside, I take so much hope from the fact that the squad is going back, emboldened, powerful. I could care less how much the clothes on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez cost on the cover of Vanity Fair. I care that she looks
not own.
Exactly. She doesn't own them. But what matters is that was a power cover. That was a power cover. She looked so damn powerful because because the squad is going back to DC with this amazing mandate, having fought these deep-pocketed primary challenges. In the case of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, they're going back with such a powerful mandate. And the squad has grown. Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush. I mean, I am excited about the prospect of a kind of an inside-outside real strategy of social movements and people pushing the party from the inside. And so, yeah, I think it's a scary moment, but I don't feel hopeless. I don't feel hopeless at all. And I think it's really important to ground ourselves in what we're fighting for, the people we're fighting for, the places we're fighting for. And when we do that, then we realize that we can't, indulge our despair. We just can't.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Naomi. That was fantastic. It was an honor speaking with you. And thank you. And next up, we have a message from West Wing's Bradley Whitford, so stay around. But first, a video highlighting Joe Biden's policies on climate.
With every bout with nature's fury caused by our own inaction on climate change, more Americans see and feel the devastation. If you give me the honor of serving as your president, we can and we will meet this moment with urgency and purpose. But I think jobs, good paying union jobs, put Americans to work, building a stronger, more climate resilient nation, modernize water and transportation systems, 1.5 million new energy efficient homes and public housing units that will benefit our communities and 3 times over by eliminating the affordable housing crisis, by increasing energy efficiency, and by reducing the racial wealth gap linked to home ownership. We'll launch a new modern civilian climate corps to heal our public lands. I believe that every American has a fundamental right to breathe clean air and drink clean water. I know that we haven't fulfilled that right yet, especially in low-income white, black, brown, and Native American communities. It's not going to be easy, but it's necessary. And I'm committing to get it done. Americans face this historic inflection point. A time of real peril, but also a time of extraordinary possibilities. We've seen the light through the dark smoke. We never give up. Always, without exception, every time, we succeed when we try.
Hi, Bradley Whitford here. Politics is the way that we create our moral vision, and the stakes of this election couldn't be higher. Access to health care in the middle of the pandemic and beyond is on the ballot. An economy that offers opportunity for all instead of accumulation for the very few is on the ballot. Structural racism and economic injustice that betrays the spectacular, unfulfilled aspiration of our country is on the ballot. The survival of the planet is on the ballot. Science is on the ballot. Competence is on the ballot. Decency is on the ballot. A truly united States is on the ballot. As Joe Biden says, the soul of our nation is on the ballot. And that's why we have to do everything we can to make sure we win this election. But elections aren't periods, they're commas. Because it turns out that we don't just get a democracy, we have to make one every day. And that's why we all have to do our part.
Thank you so much, Sonia and Naomi. That was a really dope conversation. I learned so much by listening to. I feel like I could have gone another 10 minutes listening to you because I mean, like, this is really the issue du jour. It's like it's so poignant and so on time to talk about it. And also, thank you, Bradley Whitford. I am a big fan of the West Wing, and I somehow feel like he should have been walking around the corridors of the White House like really, really fast, saying his lines because that's what I think of West Wing. That's what I think of. So with that, I would like to bring back on my colleague Sonia and my other colleague Kenya Leon to join me on the screen. I'm so glad that you are both here with me tonight. This is really great, especially 2 days before Election Day. I'm so glad to have y'all.
Can't miss it.
Thank you, Chris. I'm so glad to be here. Hey, everybody. My name's Kenya. I'm coming to you from Las Vegas. And I just want to say that I am so empowered from the conversation I just heard. And when she said she got her vibes from the full moon, y'all, I felt that. I felt like that was needed. That was an adjustment because we need this, y'all. We have 2 days. 96 million people have already voted. That's a lot of work. Y'all have been out there. So I just want to pause for a moment and recognize that within this chaos, we can have moments of joy and moments of resetting because we need that. We need that self-care.
Yes.
So I felt my ancestors last night and today. I just want to acknowledge the Day of the Dead and all the spirits and ancestors that are with us, giving us that final push that we need. So sometimes we just need to reach out to them, be open to it, and just allow ourselves a break, because we got a week coming in front of us, y'all. So grab your favorite beverage, watch some trash TV. I'm not even going to talk about Bridezillas right now, but just something that makes you smile. And because we are in this fight, and it's because of you all that we've been successful. So it's just so important that we've been voting. Isn't that right, Sonia?
Absolutely. And a lot of people have voted, but some haven't still. And I know that there's about 40 million ballots that are still out in the wild. So everyone, listen up. If you still have a ballot and have not sent it, do not send it. If you have a friend who has a ballot still in their possession and they haven't sent it, do not send it. Find your nearest drop-off location that you're allowed to in your county, in your state, check your rules, but make sure that you return it in person, because it is now too late to send. It will not make it by Tuesday, and we want to make sure that all of your ballots are counted. Everyone's vote should be counted. So everyone who has a ballot that needs to drop it off or vote in person, that's an option for everyone except in Kentucky. So if you have a ballot that you don't want to fill out and you want to go vote in person, you can turn it in, cancel it, and then go vote in person. Alternatively, you can vote by provisional ballot, and I think Kenya will talk about this later. Again, except for in Kentucky, where you must vote on the ballot you have received. Everywhere else, that's your fair play. You can go vote with your ballot by bringing it in on Tuesday, and make sure to check with your local election official to make sure that you are following every single rule, because you don't want them to throw out your vote because you didn't follow the rules. And I'll throw it over to Chris.
And thank you so much. And a reminder, per usual, that you can text POWER, POWER, to 668366 to help get 3 friends or foes to vote. Make sure that you do that today, right now. You can text POWER to 668366, help get 3 friends to vote. So we've still got Baratunde Thurston, Maurice Mitchell, and a special message from Angela Bassett, who I really love, and more. So stick around to the end of our program. And if you're still with me, go ahead in the chat and say, I'm still here. Say, I'm still here. Say, I'm still here, if you're still with us. Now, let's hear from one of our amazing Move On members who help make everything that we do happen here at Move On. I'm so excited.
I'm a Black woman. I have a Black son and daughter. And so as murders of Black men, Black children, Black women by the hand of law enforcement became more rampant, I began to realize that now is a time that we must address systemic oppression as it relates to law enforcement. To have human blood, to have a heartbeat that you can feel, and to then have the United States government say to you, yeah, you matter. Yeah, not quite all out, to be diluted down to something less than who you are. That is what injustice is, when you're not valued. I became involved with Move On after our election here in Georgia for the governor's seat, and became quite frustrated after Stacey Abrams seemingly unfairly lost the election. Move On best embodied my desire to connect with real people in real time, to talk about real solutions that we could push forward in the agenda, especially with Biden-Harris and other Senate campaigns. My time with Move On has really caused the passion I have inside of myself to overflow. I have really gone in for the home stretch, throwing a big Hail Mary with voter registration here in Georgia by using my son's football games as a means to identify people who may not be registered to vote here in Georgia. And I think it's becoming contagious in my home, because now my husband has had Zoom calls with his football team and with his colleagues to get them registered to vote. And they had a massive meeting, 65 football players, making sure that they were all registered to vote. And now that I have several people who have registered to vote and are excited about voting, my job is to get them to the polls. The reason why I support Biden-Harris. It is a ticket of civility and decency. I'm a clinical pharmacist. My specialty is pain management. And in my line of work, I see a lot of people who do not have insurance and who come to our hospital as a means of care, as a last line of treatment. So the preservation of the Affordable Health Care Act is important. I come from a long line of people who have served in this country and people who, despite the fact that there have been so many odds against them, have pushed and pushed and pushed and said the American dream is for me too. And I'm going to own this right, and you will respect this right to vote. You will respect my level of participation. You will respect my voice because I am an American citizen. I know that my voice counts. I know that my vote counts, and I will be sure that it is placed and it is heard on election day.
Wow. Thank you, Move On members, for all the work that you've been doing to volunteer. If you are joining us for the first time and you are like, what is this Move On group? You can go to moveon.org to learn more about us and to sign up for our email and SMS so you can stay in the loop with us. Again, if this is your first time and you're just hearing about Move On and you think we're pretty dope, because we are pretty dope, you can go ahead to moveon.org. Also, because I would be remiss if I did not say this to you all, you can text POWER to 668366 to make sure you get your 3 friends to vote. There's a theme here. If you didn't catch it, let me just go ahead and spell it out. We need to get our friends, family, everybody to vote, and we still have 2 days. So we are reiterating that for you on today. So make sure you text POWER, that's POWER, to 668366 to make sure you get at least 3 of your friends, family, and others to vote. Make sure that you stay tuned for some more special guests, including Baratunde Thurston, who is coming up. But for now, I'd like to bring back Rana Epting, our executive director. And also, I would like to introduce to you all who she will be speaking with, Maurice Mitchell, who is the national director of the Working Families Party. Really dope guy, really a big fan of his. He is a nationally recognized social movement strategist, a visionary leader in the movement for Black lives, and a community organizer for racial, social, and economic justice. So please, in the chat, welcome them and Rana as they come back.
Hi all, it's me again, Rana. I just want to say this has been amazing. Are you fired up? Are you ready to sprint across the finish line? Are you ready to do all you can in the next 9 days? Has anyone texted a friend to vote yet since we've been on this call? Come on, let's do it together. Everyone text one friend right now. Text someone and remind them to vote. Make sure they're voting. I'm going to text my friend Marie. Have you voted yet? When are you going to vote? All right, everyone should do this right now. And it doesn't stop there. Commit to get 3 of your friends to vote. Text POWER, the word POWER, to 668366 to get involved, and we'll help you out, okay? So now that we've heard from one amazing historic woman, it is time to hear from another. It is my honor to introduce the one and only Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi is a tireless fighter for justice, for equal pay, for workers, for healthcare, for the environment. She is a force of nature and someone who has stood up to Donald Trump time and time again. 2 years ago, we had calls just like this to turn out the vote in 2018 to make sure Leader Pelosi would once again be Speaker of the House. And 2 years ago, we turned out in historic numbers to deliver the largest Democratic victory since Watergate and return Nancy Pelosi to the Speaker's chair. It's what we need to do again, but we need to do the House and the Senate and the presidency. And we need a historic turnout. We need another historic victory. And we need to once again show our power, once again show our country can and must go in another direction. And give Speaker Pelosi a bigger majority so she can work with President Biden to pass needed legislation to turn this country around. So please please join me in welcoming Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Rana. It is an honor to join Move On and bring greetings from our House Democrats. We're in the final 9 days of the most consequential election of our lifetime, an election that is about nothing less than taking.
Hi, everyone. It's Rana again. Nice to see you. And I've got to be honest, I've looked forward to this moment all week, not just because we're 48 hours out from Election Day, but because I get to talk to my friend, Maurice Mitchell. Maurice is an ally in the fight for justice. And every time I talk with Maurice, I come away inspired and ready to fight, knowing we are in this together. And for those of you that don't know him, Maurice is the national director of the Working Families Party, and he is one of the most virtuous organizers and leaders I've ever met. He's super sharp, got a great strategic mind, and he leads with the love, compassion, and inclusivity our world needs right now. So hi, Mo, welcome. I'm excited to talk to you tonight.
Hello, friend, and thank you for that very generous introduction.
So I'll just start off with some context. I mean, first, let me say this about the election. Without jinxing it, like I really believe we are in a good position heading into Election Day. We are poised to win, and we are the majority. And if we turn out in historic numbers, like we did 2 years ago to give Democrats their largest margin of victory since Watergate, we'll have a decisive victory once again. And so far, things are looking good. But sadly, we know that Donald Trump and the Republicans are already planning to potentially challenge the results. And Trump himself has outright refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power. And the best way to avoid a fraught situation is to overwhelmingly win at the ballot box on Tuesday. And that's what we're all here for. That's the work that we've been doing over the last couple months or the whole year. But we want to make sure the results of the election are so insurmountable that there is nothing to dispute. That's our main focus and number one goal. So if you put any effort into anything over the next 40 hours, it should be to winning at the ballot box. But we're also thinking about how to prepare as a country for a Trump tantrum should he lose. And that's possible, especially given his behavior. So Maurice and I are going to spend some time tonight talking about what we can do as a people that live all over this country should we be in a position in which Trump undermines the results of the election. And the most important thing I want everyone to walk away from this conversation is, it is the voters who decide the outcome of this election and nothing more. So Maurice, thanks for joining us. We're 48 hours out and let's get into it.
Go.
Okay.
Go.
So you and I have been part of a ton of conversations lately around the fact that we may not know who the winner is on election night. That's so not normal compared to past presidential election cycles, or at least most of them. And I'm not sure if everyone's really tuned in to why. Like, why may we not know who wins on election night? So I was hoping you could kind of break it down a little bit on what the factors are here and what that 24-hour timeline might look like for us.
Okay, well, great question. And I want everybody to think of two things, two chief reasons why we may not know the outcome on election night. Number one, our elections are administered not nationally, but they're administered on the local level. So we don't have one big election. We have many, many elections, county by county by county. So when you're casting your ballot, you're casting it through a whole process that is on the local level with a bunch of county sort of election administrators. It's different in every state. Sometimes it's different county by county. And there's all different types of rules. And so there's a patchwork of elections taking place all over this country. And so the results are going to roll in at different times, some slower, some faster, using different machines, different laws. And so that's the nature of our election system. And we should just anticipate that we're not going to get the results all at once. Number two, we are casting ballots during a historic pandemic, right? And so as a result, states that have never done early voting or doing early voting for the first time, states that have never had mail-in ballots are mailing in ballots. And as many people know, we've mailed in tens of millions of ballots, both absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. We've dropped them off at drop boxes. Some of us are dropping them off at polling locations. So it actually takes a long time to count all of those ballots. You know, California, for example, right? We've just gotten used to the fact that we don't know all of the outcomes in all of the elections in California because sometimes it takes several days to count the ballots. So we can anticipate that just on a bigger level. And it's likely that we won't know the outcome 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we might learn it maybe in a few days or in a few weeks. And that's okay. It's not election day, it's election season.
Exactly. And I would say there's probably a third reason as well, is that we have historic voter turnout this year.
Yes. That's a really exciting reason. It means that our forces are at work getting people out to vote. You know, Donald Trump did not win the popular vote last time. And it's becoming increasingly harder for Republicans to win the popular vote for presidential elections. And that's something that I think is encouraging. Our country is moving in a more progressive direction. And they know that, which is one of the reasons why they're trying to have us be fearful, and they're committed to voter suppression and trying to depress our votes with misinformation. They know that the popular will of the people is not on their side. And they win when we're divided, when we're confused, when we cede to a lot of this misinformation, when we look at the administration of our elections and we doubt them. That advantages the far right, which is why this conversation is so important and why everybody that's watching should be encouraged to know that we're mobilizing, that we have momentum, and that we win when we're united, when we're educated about our rights, and when we organize.
Great. And that's a great segue to the next part of our conversation, which is, what do we do if Trump tries to pull some more funny business? Some of the pundits out there have speculated that maybe Donald Trump on election day will try to declare victory before the polls even close. But he's also been tweeting and he's taking actions that indicate he may still have some tricks in his bag. And he may want to rig this thing or create enough confusion where he can start to move it to contesting in the courts or refusing to concede. So how should regular people, not pundits, think about what to do in a moment in which Trump is trying to undermine the integrity of the results or refuse to concede in a moment where we know that right now all things indicate that there's going to be a Biden win?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would want people to hold two things, right? So we should take Donald Trump, and by Trump, we're talking about Trump and the Republican Party. And we've heard even some Republican senators question democracy outright. So we should take them seriously. However, we should generally look at their activity as the activity of people who understand that they're losing, right? They wouldn't be sort of acting out in this way, engaging in all this funny business, if they thought that they could win outright without breaking the rules, right? They know that they're losing. They know that their days are numbered. And so all of this activity, they're throwing everything they can at our democracy so that they could somehow figure out a way of winning when they know that the popular will is against them. So if we're in a situation where the president tries to pull some funny business, remember that he actually isn't a strong man. He actually isn't an authoritarian. He's a weak man, strong man. And this is how weak people, how bullies, how insecure people act. They act out, and that it's going to be required of us to develop a lot of unity and don't be drawn into the despair, the confusion, the fear, the cynicism that he wants to draw us into when he tweets whatever he's going to tweet, when he tries to suggest that the vote isn't what it is, when he tries to tell us not to believe our own eyes and ears and to believe his version of the story. Don't be drawn into that. What we should be drawn into is collective action to declare in one voice that every single vote needs to be counted, and that the people's will should determine who the president is. And if we keep to that message and we repeat that message with our loved ones on social media, when we hit the streets, we'll be victorious.
That's wonderful. And so I want to talk a bit about how folks joining us here tonight can get engaged. Many of you that are watching on the live stream are already participating either in Move On's Mobilize to Win program, or you're volunteering with the campaign, or maybe you're volunteering with Working Families Party or elsewhere. But right now in the final stretch, where can folks go to raise their hand, to join together, to prepare as we head into the final 2 election day or days of the election and beyond? And so I know that you all have some stuff you're planning and want you to share that, and I can talk a little bit about what else is going on out there. So you
Great.
go first.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. So there's 2 things that I want to invite people into. So if you're watching, take out your phone and text the word count to 30403, right? Or go to workingfamilies.org and sign up. And then you'll be part of the Working Families conversation, and we'll plug you into all of the grassroots volunteer efforts that we're involved in. The second really exciting thing that you could get involved in is a project called The Frontline, which is a joint campaign between the Working Families Party and the Movement for Black Lives Electoral Justice Project and other partners like United We Dream Action, where we're building this really exciting volunteer armada of all these people who hit the streets during the summer. And I'm sure some of you could be counted in that number. And we're putting folks to work, right? Because voting is not enough. And you understand that, right? Like, you understand that that's why you're on this call, that we have to vote, but then we have to translate that energy into volunteer action, peer-to-peer texting, phone banking, protesting, organizing, and we'll give you all of the, we'll give you the script and we'll give you all of the instructions to make that work easy and to be part of a supportive, multiracial, cross-movement sort of community of people who are doing that work. To join the Frontline, you could go to thefrontline.org or text Frontline to 30403.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Maurice. And I'll just also add, folks on this live stream all throughout this call tonight, we're talking about ways to engage in Move On's Mobilize to Win program. But if you do want to get more information around what do we do in a scenario in which Trump tries to undermine the results of the election, a great place to go is protecttheresults.com. You may have heard of it. It's a place where we're organizing together to be ready to move together in a moment in which we need to, as a community, make sure that our voices are heard, that it is the people who should decide. It is the will of the people that should decide who the next president is. And so we'll be joining together after Election Day if we need to. And you can go to protecttheresults.com to get more information and to make sure you're on the list. So I wanted to thank you so much, Maurice, for joining us tonight and for everything you do and for your friendship and your camaraderie. And let me just be clear, I believe that we will win. And it's going to be at the ballot box on Tuesday. And if it's not, it will be moving forward together because we are the majority. And I'm so grateful that we're in this with you. So thank you so much for having us and onward to victory.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for everything that Move On does for our community and our movement. Really appreciate all of the work that you've done over the past year, and excited to be able to toast to victory very, very soon with you.
Great. And with that, we'll pass it back to Chris. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Maurice and Rana. Now I'd like to bring back my colleagues, Kenya and Sonia.
Hey. So as you see, y'all, we are styling and profiling with our PPE. Thank you, Move On. We are masked, but not silenced, y'all. So I just want to take a moment and follow up and talk about safety at the polls. So you want to make sure that you do have your mask. Maybe bring a couple of masks if you're standing outside in a hot line. You want to make sure you have gloves, you bring your sanitizer, anything that you need to help you be safe. And remember social distancing. We want to be able to enjoy the fruits of our labors and see our outcomes come to fruition. So we need to be here for that. So we need to be protected. So please Remember your PPE. You could be silent like us. And remember, you could tag yourself on social media wearing your mask. Show us your swag.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some people who may have a difficult time standing in line. Make sure that you bring your chair, make sure that that chair is socially distanced, make sure that if you have a reported disability, you know that you have special accommodations that can be provided to you at the polling place. And most importantly, if for any reason you run into issues while you're voting, you think that you want to fill out a provisional ballot after you've tried everything else and they're not letting you, anything else that comes up, do not hesitate to call the Election Protection Hotline. Also, reminder, I'll do it for Chris this time because he always gets to do these. You can text POWER to 668-366 to help get 3 friends to vote. Try to especially think of people who you know haven't voted yet and you know that you want to support them through the day of voting on election day. So back to you, Chris.
Oh, thank you. And you did that very well. If you're still with us, please go ahead in the chat and say, we're still here. You're still here. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Lilium Alfavon and Izzy Brownstein to talk a little bit more about the Election Protection Hotline.
Yes.
I wanted to introduce Izzy Bronstein from Common Cause to talk to us about ways people can make sure their vote is counted this election. Izzy, can you tell us what the Election Protection Hotline is?
Absolutely. So the Election Protection Hotline is a place where any voter can go if they're having any concerns about the voting process. You can talk to somebody who's familiar with the laws in your state to get the information about where to vote, what might be going wrong, or anything else that you might need.
Okay, perfect. What are the top 3 things to look for when voting to make sure your vote is counted?
Absolutely. The top things to look for are just check your local laws. Every state is different, every county is different, and it's important not to look at information that's coming from elsewhere and just to focus on what's happening in your community. If you really want to know what's going on exactly, you can call your own county clerk or your board of elections, and they can give you the best information. If you voted absentee, many states offer you the opportunity to track your ballot. So you can find the Ballot Tracker and make sure that you see a little check mark that your ballot was counted. And if you're voting in person, just make sure that you are prepared with anything you might need. If you need an ID in your state, make sure you have that with you. If you need to, set aside a few hours to wait in some lines, make sure you're doing that.
Perfect. So very specific, depending on the area, depending on the individual.
I think that's one thing we've seen in the past couple of weeks of folks talking, especially about vote by mail, right? In a lot of states, ballots will be counted as long as they're postmarked by election day. So as a DC voter, my ballot will count when it's postmarked by election day. So I could turn it in on November 2nd and it would be counted. However, in many states, you want to turn it into the drop box right now and you don't want to put it in the mail. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so important to know what's going on in your own community and make sure that you are following the recommendations from the advocates and the trusted officials in your state.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. Are there more examples of when people should call the Election Protection Hotline outside of the ones you already listed?
Yeah, if you're ever asked to vote provisionally, call the hotline. If you're ever asked for anything that you don't think is required, if you're asked about your citizenship status or for papers that you don't think are required, call the hotline, check in on that. If you have any situations where you just think something isn't quite right, make sure you call because it's always important to check. And if you experience any questions or concerns around what's going on with the poll workers, any problems or any questions while voting, please call or text 866-OUR-VOTE, and somebody's gonna be there to help you and make sure all of your questions get answered. We don't want any voter to feel like they're alone in a process of voting that is different this year for a lot of people. This is the first year, right? Like this is the first year that many folks are voting by mail. And so that process might feel different or scary to voters who are new to that system. So we want to make sure that you don't feel alone in that process. Every year we see new ways that folks try to suppress voters, but we also see states and counties taking really incredible steps in innovation to help voters in the process. And I think that it's the most important thing to remember is like the elections process is there to count your vote. And if it ever feels like that's not what's happening, that's why you can call and text 866-OUR-VOTE and make sure that that's working. But at the end of the day, it's about making your voice heard. And if that process is stopped in any way, then that's something we're ready to fight. I just to say, like, the hotline is nonpartisan. It's there for every voter to cast, to make sure that their vote is counted. We believe in democracy. We believe in representation. And we want to make sure that voters, no matter who you're voting for, no matter what ballot measures you're voting for, no matter, what you care about, that you are, you have an opportunity. And then I would just say, like, if you are seeing any narratives around fear about going to your polling place or any concern, just know that voter intimidation is illegal in all 50 states. And and the hotline is there to help with those questions. But no matter, but folks should not be scared of going to the polls. The polling place is meant to be a place for civic participation, that we're all able to, be heard.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for all the work you're doing, because again, it's such difficult work, but it's so, so important. And all of you are doing amazing work. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And thank you to all the Move On members. There are thousands of Move On members this year who are serving as poll monitors in states across the country. So who are wearing that nonpartisan t-shirt to help voters outside the polling place. And so thank you to all of you who are helping, make sure everybody's voices are heard this election.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Thanks.
Who do we want to be? When it's all said and done with the 2020 presidential election, how do we want to be remembered? For me, I want this moment to be remembered by our courage. I want us to be remembered for finding the strength to fight in the face of adversity. I want this moment to reflect the significance of losing over 200,000 Americans, many Black and Latino. I want it to be said, those are folks who knew their power.
All right. Thank you so much, Lilia and Izzy. And thank you for the special message from Angela Bassett and our friends at Florida for All. I just have to say to you all, I am a huge fan of Angela Bassett. And so, like, the fact that she was just here is really dope to me. But I just love her so much. And thank you so much for this special message. Now I'm going to bring on my colleagues, Kenya and Sonia, one more game.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm so excited that Lilia and Izzy got to talk to you about what it kind of looks like to walk through the voter protection hotline. So now you know. You have everything at your disposal, or your friends and family who haven't gotten to vote yet, something happened, they need to go vote on election day. That's perfect. For some of us, it may be really easy. For me, it was less than a 10-minute line and it was great, but that's not the reality for everyone. And that's okay. For those of you that have to wait in line longer, just be excited to be out in community. Bring your chair, like I mentioned before, bring your snacks, and most importantly, bring your joy. I have been seeing such a great example of people just like bringing their music, bringing their swag, dancing in line, socially distanced, of course. And I just want to encourage y'all to think of this as kind of a joyous moment and embrace it. Also, again, keeping in mind the voter protection hotline, and if anything starts to go kind of sideways because you're seeing some voter intimidation, know the signs for that and know that you need to call to be able to report that.
That's so important, Sonia. We want to make sure that everyone not only feels safe with their social distancing and PPE, but also just feeling safe in this joyous moment of what we get to vote for, and really just sit in that. So anything you have a question on, don't hesitate to talk to a poll worker and reach out. Take out your phone right now and put that number in there, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Put it in there. And that's going to be important, because if for whatever reason you are voting on election day, Tuesday, and you run into any kind of challenges and they tell you you cannot vote, there is something that is super important for you to know, and it's called provisional ballots. Provisional ballots are ballots that let you vote for the federal office. So if all else fails, they're telling you it's not working, you have the right to request a provisional ballot. So do not leave. Stay in line. Even when the door closes, if you're in line, you're entitled to vote. Don't leave before you vote. Get a provisional ballot if you need to. We need every one of your voices in this fight, y'all. So I'm super excited to see what Tuesday is going to look like.
And speaking of Tuesday and it being election day, you have your reminder that you can text POWER, POWER, to 66836 to help remind 3 friends to go vote. It's so important that you do this, and it's so important that not only that you vote, but you get your friends to vote too. Not only that you vote, but get your friends to vote too. And with that, I'd like to introduce our very own Erica Motter and the wonderful Baratunde Thurston. Take it away, Erica.
My name is Erica Motter with Move On, and I'd like to introduce our next special guest and a friend of mine, Baratunde Thurston. Baratunde is an Emmy-nominated host who has worked for The Onion, produced for The Daily Show, advised the Obama White House, and wrote the New York Times bestseller, How to Be Black, in addition to having a wildly popular TED Talk and being the host of multiple successful podcasts. Thank you, Baratunde, my friend, for joining us.
Thank you for having me here, Erica. It's good to see you. And let's get these votes cast and counted.
Let's do it. So it feels like we're at a pivotal moment in history. And you have a fantastic podcast called How to Citizen about our collective power in this country. We've talked a lot in these programs about how if your voice didn't matter, no one would be trying to silence you. So can you talk a little about the power of community and voting?
Thank you for that. And I love that version of explaining voter suppression. You know, nobody's trying to stop you from just like Netflix and chilling all the time, right? Like they're trying to stop you from voting. So what is the power at play in that scenario? And in terms of community and voting, we have a lot of ways we can show up for each other. In a democracy, we have a lot of access to power because we are the people, and that's how that word works. Literally, it's in the name. People power is the Greek democracy translation. And so voting is an important way for those of us who can do it to speak. I think of it as hiring. And if you are hiring somebody for a 2-year job or a 4-year job, you might want to look into their background. You might want to ask them a few questions. And even after you hired them, you're going to want to pay attention to how they're doing the work.
Right on. So you've also talked about the way we use language around racial justice in a lot of your work, including your wildly popular TED Talk. And a lot of the language that we use both in media and in our conversations about politics are actually perpetuating systemic racism. Like, how do we use this national kind of collective reckoning conversation we're having to transform the way we are thinking and talking about like the problems we're actually trying to solve and the future we want to create together?
I mean, I'm just trying to get a monopoly on all the how-to titles. So I've got 2 down, 1 billion to go. There's a lot of verbs out there. But making citizen into a verb was an intentional choice because the language, the word citizen, has been interpreted and I would say abused to only refer to legal status and then to separate us from each other, to draw a line around some of us and excluding others. And I don't think that version of the word serves the highest version of us, certainly doesn't serve the small d democracy that we're all a part of. So to citizen as a verb is to show up for each other. And I like that interpretation. It's to be active. It's to value the many over just the interest of a few, which is the way our economy has been working for far too long. It's up to us.
You remind me how like the role of the griots in storytelling, and we can't solve problems if we can't name them.
That's very true.
So that's what I appreciate about your work, is you're out here helping us name the problems and tell the stories. So we're running a campaign right now to help folks pledge to get 3 of their friends to vote. So do you have any advice for how people who are watching can talk to their friends and community and get them to pledge to be a voter in this election?
I got a couple of thoughts. The first is a negative thought, which is to say something to avoid. I know if you're watching this, you're in the Move On family. You're probably a regular voter. You probably donate. You probably get a lot of texts from Move On, and like Robert Reich is blowing up your phone all the time. And that's cool, but you're not normal. Right? I'm not normal. We're outliers in this universe, and showing up to friends and family who are not regularly in this universe, shaming them into voting, talking about how they're disrespecting the system and blah. No one wants to be talked down to. No one. I don't. You don't. So I think the first step is to think about how you would want somebody to try to convince you to do something. And it probably doesn't start with how you've done everything wrong and how you're shaming your family name or something. Sell it. Sell it. I think that if you can find something that people care about and then connect it to the vote, people care about their children's safety. People care about whether the police are going to show up to help or harm them. People care about whether we can safely open our businesses and open our schools again. If you can connect those real concerns, those real hopes, some of those real dreams to a ballot proposition, to a local office, to a statewide office, to a federal office, that will do some of the work for you. So find out. What I guess I'm saying is start with a question. Don't start with all your wokeness and all your facts and all your, cool. You got a lot of info. Bravo. Do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? So pause, take a deep breath, and try to meet somebody where they're coming from. You don't have to go all the way, but move toward them and then invite them toward you. I'm not guaranteeing success, but I guarantee if you only drop the hammer of information and bullet points, you'll likely fail. I've tried it and it doesn't work well.
Mm-hmm. That speaks to, we're not necessarily trying to convince people who have a political position to take a different one so much as we're trying to convince people who are skeptical about participating to participate.
That's true. And I'm glad you added that, because one of the things that frustrates me so much about the past few years is the attack on the institution itself, on the institution of voting, on the institution of inspectors general, on the institution of the courts, on the institution of journalism, not specific journalists, just journalism. And those attacks we should take personally because they're attacks on us. We are part of a process. There is no United States of America unless we believe in it. There is no democracy unless we work for it. And once we got folks undermining the very pillars of the process, not outcomes, but process, we got a problem. And I need folks to think about voting as part of a process. And I need folks to think about participation and turning up that vote as adding legitimacy to the process. Mm-hmm. The more votes we have, the more legitimate the representation system is. It's like pixel density on your smartphone. You want more pixels. The image is sharper. I want a high fidelity democracy. I want that HD democracy. I want that 8K democracy. And that involves everybody lending their legitimacy. And again, we have the power. We lend legitimacy to the system. And it's not the other way around. We don't beg to be seen. We offer legitimacy. The elected officials are going to listen to somebody. These budgets are being determined by somebody. Let it be you.
I love that. HD democracy. That's beautiful. Are there any last thoughts you want to share with us?
Yeah. So ignore Nate Silver. Seriously. Don't look at forecasts. I think there's something off about predicting the outcome of an election. I do not agree with the enterprise at all. I think it's a very light and subtle form of voter suppression. I don't mean that in a malicious way from the folks who do it. I think the idea that we expect this thing it's supposed to happen. The polls said the only polls that count are the poll results we count.
All right, Baratunde, you have reminded us how important it is to participate, how important it is to participate together to get that HD democracy we deserve. And thank you for offering us all some hope and strength this evening.
Thank you, Erica. It's good to see you. It's good to be a part of this. Vote, 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 vote. I don't know if you got the message from this conversation, but we're pro-voting and then pro-counting votes, which if you don't count them, then it literally doesn't count. So do that.
Count all the votes. Thanks, Baratunde.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. This has been a wonderful, great program so far. If you are still with us, go ahead in the chat and let us know. Say, I'm still here. I just want to make sure you're still with us. I know that we're all excited. I just want to make sure that you're still here with me. All right. So make sure you go ahead in the chat and just let me know that you're here. Because it get lonely, you know. Anyway, I am so happy and so honored to introduce somebody who is a really great friend of mine. And I'm so happy and honored to introduce to you all somebody who really has helped me think about resilience in a different way, in a more grounded way. She is so phenomenal. She has over 25 years of experience. She is renowned for her extraordinary ability to identify the emotional and spiritual impact that historical trauma and oppression have had on women's ability to love, live, and lead. And so I am so happy to introduce to you all and to be having in conversation my great friend, Dr. D. How you doing, Dr. D?
Hey, from New York City. Thank you
Yes.
for everybody who's watching. And it's such an honor, Chris, to be doing this with you today. It's
I
such a
am
pivotal
glad.
time.
As we are sitting in this transitional space during this truly defining time, what do you want to hold or amplify for folks in this moment?
This time is calling for us to be at the intersections of our spirituality and our faith. And that's what's going to get us out of this time, is to tap into something much bigger than ourselves. And so whatever that looks like for the, people watching today, um, you know, bring ritual back to your light, light a candle to your ancestors, bring ritual into your organizations, bring healing into the organizations. Let's start creating sacred spaces to heal together and to heal with accountability, so that we're not healing in absence, but in the context of our culture, right? Of our spirituality.
You know, it's so interesting that you brought that up because sometimes it's the stories of the history that we come from that fuel the work that we do, right? And so talk about how, like, even as we look to our ancestors, and there's so much going on in our country right now, like, but in all the things that have been that's going on, like, we look to find hope. And usually I find hope by looking back at the stories of the folks who came before me and how they made it, as my grandmother would say, how I got over, right? Like how we made it over through whatever the issues and the hardships were. So talk about like how um, history and story can help fuel the present as we think about voting, as we think about this election, as we think about just making it through this season in our country and world where it's like a pandemic going on. Talk about how story and can really help fuel us forward.
Yeah, I think what's important in that is that we get to create our story, right? So
Mm,
something happens to us and we decide we're not good enough, we don't belong, it's my fault, nobody loves me, right? All the things. And we live
mhm,
powerfully into that. And it doesn't help that we live in a world that's constantly telling people of color, you're right, actually, to think all of
mhm,
those things, right?
mhm,
Um, and it doesn't help that we're being persecuted, right? And all of these wars, right? And so I think it's important for people to understand we get to create a different story. We
mm,
get to take the time to grieve and to heal and to create another story about ourselves, which is the story that we were born with, which is that we are spiritual warriors,
mm,
that we've done this before, that we know exactly what we need to do to get out of this, but we cannot do this alone, right? And I think it's important to understand that capitalism wants us to be in social isolation, because when people get together to heal, to transform, to dream of another world, it happens. And
mm,
that's the threat in this country, right?
mm,
So yeah.
I love that. I I resonate with that a lot, just therapeutically, because our ability to like rewrite our narrative is so powerful, because we are in charge of our story. And then in the political lens, I also see like voting as an opportunity to change our narrative, because we get to choose, right? Like we get to rewrite that story. And even like locally, like local politics, like we have a bigger pen, you know, in that sense. So I just really love that healing with accountability and being able to rewrite that narrative as really being something that is so powerful. So thank you for that, Dr. D.
Yes, and you know, voting, you know, is more than just the outcome, right? Voting and going out to vote is about giving people back their agency, their sovereignty, their voice, their ability to choose, their self-determination, right? Which is some of the things that are really being depleted right now.
I wonder how, as a part of resilience, because I've been watching the news, and there have been folks going to the polls, and as they are on their way to the polls, there's been some dance parties, you know, at in lines, you know, folks been doing the cha-cha slide. Okay, for those of y'all who don't know what it is, just go ahead and Google it. But after this, okay, cha-cha. Okay, anyway, but like, you know, like, so folks have been using different ways to just uh, to show up in this moment, and we know that historically, like, this is nothing new. Like, can you talk a little bit about how joy speaks to resilience in this moment? Uh, yeah.
Yeah, because I think people are struggling with that because people think that joy means that they don't care, right?
Mm.
People, we
Hmm.
live in a world right now where, you know, it's kind of like oppression Olympics. So the more you
Yeah.
grieve, the more people, you know, have compassion for you. But if you bring a story of joy and celebration, people are like, you're not here, you're not
Right.
present, what's going on, right? You don't care.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we don't understand that, you know, we need to be joy and celebration by any means possible.
Yes.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Dr. D. This was fantastic.
You're
All
welcome.
right.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Until next time.
Perfect. Wow. Thank you so much, Chris and Kenya. That conversation with Dr. D was so powerful. I think resilience is kind of a buzzword sometimes, and it's useful to have someone break it down and how it really, what it really means for us and for our communities. I think something that really spoke to me was the concept of creating our own futures and voting being a part of that, being a step in the right direction. And something I've been thinking about a lot is getting to know my family's history better because that helps inform my present and my future better. So talking to my elders who are alive and hearing what they think of this current moment, what inspires them, and helping that drive me. So the fight continues, everyone.
Absolutely. And it's something that, you know, we might feel alone or like we've been fighting. Maybe we didn't know until we found this community or till we found a group that we do work with, but also knowing that like our ancestors and like people that have done the work for us to be able to do the work is super important. So pulling from that strength. And just knowing that election day itself is going to be filled with excitement. There's a lot of emotions all ground up into one. Don't worry, we won't ask you to talk about them. But knowing that excitement is going to be high, you might be hearing all kinds of news, might be wondering, you know, is there anything else I can do? The one thing you can do, know that you've done everything you can up to this moment. But the one thing you can do is text POWER, POWER, to 668-366 and just make sure we can really hit that final step and know that we've done and mobilized as many people as we can.
Um, what she said. I just, I have to say that, you know, other than taking my line, which both you, Kenya, and Soya have done perfectly, um, you we know that when we show up, we win. The most important thing that we can do right now is to bring our friends and our families to vote, so we turn out and all work together to win in a landslide victory. We need this. We're going to show up to vote and we're going to show up for each other. And if he attempts to steal the election, if he tries to attempt to stay in power, we are the majority. We are a community that takes care of each other. He doesn't get to decide the election, we do. And we're going to ensure that every vote is counted. If we need to, we'll turn out to non-violently protest like we've done so this year, and in all the years we and our ancestors have shown up to protest for our rights. If we need to, we are prepared to mobilize non-violently to ensure every vote is counted. And you can sign up for that at moveon.org/protect the results. But either way, we're going to be okay. Let me say it again for those in the back. Either way, we are going to be okay. These might be hard times, and we've lived through hard times before, because we always show up and take care of our people, and we take care of one another, right? We know that we are the majority in this country, and if we all vote, we will win. This is the last push. We're almost across the finish line. So I just want to again reiterate to each of you that when we show up, when we vote, we win. So make sure that you tap your friends, your families, your loved ones to make sure they get out and vote. And think about your ancestors. Think about how you got here. When all the noise of the next 2 days happened, think about how you got here. Ground. Think about some of that conversation we had with Dr. D and the conversations that we've been having over the last several weeks and even months. I am so grateful that you all came to be with us, to hear from us, to share this space of community. I'm thankful to Kenya and to Sonia for their leadership and their guidance in this space and moment. This is it. Call your friends, call them now, text them now. It's got 2 days. With that, I am so grateful for all of you. And we got this. Good night.
Voting is important because everything that you hold dear, your friends, your families, your community, your dreams, everything that you expect out of this country hinges upon your voice.
It shows officials who will hold them accountable.
And show them that we matter and we demand change.
Change in the areas that need changing.
To fix what is broken and to uplift and highlight voices that aren't being heard. I consistently lean on and learn from the Black artists and friends in my life, and I feel it is especially my duty to them to vote for leaders that will recognize their rights.
It is one of the most crucial ways we can have our voices and our opinions heard and recognized.
It is the most powerful tool we have to make a difference, not only in our lives, but the lives to come.
Young voters especially, because we make up half of the voting population. Now is not the time to be still. It's not a moment to sit and watch our country suffer from environmental issues, economic issues, gender, LGBTQ, and racial inequality, among countless other issues, and do nothing about it.
Action is the ultimate confirmation of belief.
People who look like me fought and died so that we would all have the right to be able to do so. It's a tangible way to combat systematic racism by voting for elected officials who believe in equality for all people.
My ancestors fought to be a part of this democracy, to be seen as human and to have the same equal rights as everybody else.
So many people have fought and died for your right and their right to vote, so take pride in that and make sure you're exercising your right to vote at every opportunity possible.
We are democracy, not a monarchy, and we are not going back.
Continuing to vote is the only way to fight disenfranchisement and to ensure that your own individual voice, which is so important, is heard.
You might be just sitting at home thinking, oh, I already know the outcome. I don't need to vote. Enough people are going to vote anyway. But for all you know, 1,000 other people could be sitting at home thinking the exact same thing.
We might think I'm just one person. How can I really make a difference? Collectively, our vote empowers us to install people into leadership who align with our values and our vision for the country. My vote is my voice.
It's how we make our voices heard to build a better future for our country.
It's my way of holding my voice accountable. Because if I don't, There's no way I can look myself in the mirror.
We get to exercise our right and use our voice to make America a better place. I vote for my familia in Puerto Rico. I vote to end mass incarceration and police brutality. I vote to keep the arts in the schools. And I vote to get to see an America where everyone's treated equally, no matter where you come from, what your gender is, who you love, or what the color of your skin is.
It's your right as an American citizen, and you want your voice to be heard, and you can make a difference on how this country is run.
Every vote counts. It's our constitutional right. So let's change the world.
Yes, we have so far to go, but it begins with your vote.
Elections matter. Justice is on the ballot. Justice is on the ballot when 1 in 5 mothers has hungry children. Justice is on the ballot when millions of people just lost their jobs, many of whom did not have paid sick leave, paid family leave, many of whom don't have affordable childcare. Justice is on the ballot when we look at the disparities around whose children and where they're living geographically have access to broadband to be able to be educated at home, much less have a laptop. Justice is on the ballot when you look at the disproportionate number of African Americans and Latinos who have been afflicted with and have died from COVID-19. Justice is on the ballot when people in our country are struggling like they are right now. So we got to get everybody out to vote. We got to take back the Senate. We got to retain our majority in the House. And we need to win the White House and elect Joe Biden.